Hey folks, it's Abby and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I can't even remember if I did this last year, I do not know, I had to go find the questions, but we're here, I'm doing it, finally. The mid-year book freakout tag is basically a list of 13 questions about the books that you read so far this year, the books that you want to read in the second half of the year, and how you felt about them all. Let's dive into question 1. The best book that you've read so far this year. I need to move you for that. So, we're at my red shelves. These are my science fiction fantasy organised alphabetically, and the highest rated book I've read so far this year is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Now, I will say that there are some issues surrounding this book. Please do your research before you pick it up. There are some issues with the inspiration that TJ Klune took from the residential schools that Indigenous peoples were forced into in the North Americas. Please be aware of that. I do have some issues. Mainly, basically, this is a feel-good story, so by the end everyone's happy in this like cute little community that they've made. And if it was inspired by Indigenous residential schools, I don't know how I feel about that, but separating it entirely from this apparent inspiration, the book is beautiful. It's beautifully written. It follows young people with these magical powers who don't fit in, they don't belong, and we follow the main character Linus, who is a little goody two-shoes. He does everything that he's supposed to until finally he breaks with this group and he decides that he has to help them. I cried so much, like my partner thought that there was something wrong with me because I was crying that much. This is just beautiful. And then something that I rated with the same star rating, but a very different vibe, and that is Super Volcanoes by Robin George Andrews. This is a non-fiction all about volcanoes all around the world, and also off the world. This is a fantastic non-fiction that my mother-in-law got me last Christmas, and I really enjoyed reading it, and it has some fantastic information in here. We all know by now that I love a good volcano, so I adored this. Then question 2 is the best sequel that you've read so far this year, which doesn't involve moving you too far, because the highest rated sequel that I read so far is Behind All of the Plugs that my parents lent us for our trip to Europe. Please ignore those. And that is Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. This is the fourth Murderbot novella. This series of novellas follows a... I've not had to describe this in ages. It follows a security unit that is sent along with groups that go on trips to other planets by the corporation that kind of owns the planets when they want to do expositions for whatever reason. But this one has been able to hack their control unit, and theoretically they could do anything, but they just sit and watch soap operas the entire time. And they then eventually end up having to help the humans because the humans are so stupid. It's like, why are you doing stupid things? But they're all things that humans would do, I can't deny. And it kind of evolves from the first book. Obviously this is the 4th one, I can't mention much, but I adore these, like, so much. Stupid humour. It isn't British, but it's close to that style of British humour. So I adore it. I adore it. Then question 3 is a new release that you still need to read. Now we have to go to my mess of a desk for that one. Hello! So, new releases that I still need to read. There are only 2 on my shelves, and that is Book of Night by Holly Black. This was the Illumicrate book for June that I didn't read because I was busy. And then Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Murrow. This is the Goldsborough book that came in June that I always then read in July. So it's normal that I haven't read this one yet, but I'm still very excited for it. So this one, Even Your Shadow Can Be Stolen. It's about a young girl who's good at blowing things up and is violent. I say young girl, like my age. I'm 25. I'm so old. But yes, this is an adult book. This one is also adult, but it is a historical fantasy set in 1882 in the north of Edinburgh. And it's about these children who have fantastical powers. Can you tell I like that? By any chance? I'm very excited to read both of those. And then question 4 is my most excited new release for the second half of the year. So, I have 3. First one is a re-release, and that is Armageddon Out of Here by Derek Landy. This is a collection of short stories in the Skullduggery Pleasant universe, and Derek Landy is re-releasing this with more stories in and in the same cover style as the grimoire, so of course I am buying that and reading it, obviously. And then also the Goldsborough books that I know are going to be coming in July and in August. So in July we have The Final Strife, and in August we have Lost in Time. I do not know what either of them are about. I think I've mentioned this before, I trust the Goldsborough GSFF box with my life, so I'm just very excited to read them. Then question 5 is the biggest disappointment I've had so far. Okay, let's move you. Hello, this is a new angle. Because it's this section of my shelves. The biggest disappointment that I've had so far in 2022 is This Woven Kingdom by Tehera Mafi. This was the first thing I ever read by Tehera Mafi, but I'd heard how much everyone loved the Shatter Me series. This is like a completely different one. It's meant to actually be like inspired by her own culture's mythology rather than, you know, the colonizers' mythologies, so I thought it was going to be absolutely fantastic. The concept sounded great, and it's also gorgeous, this naked hardback sent from Illumicrate. It was atrocious. It's one of the worst books I've ever read. I gave it 2 stars. The only redeeming quality was that I got to read it with the Illumicrate group. We almost all hated it on the Discord. Yeah, it was just very poorly written. Very little character development. The character keeps making the same stupid decisions that make no logical sense with the plot of the book. The concept is great, like I'd love to know what happens in the rest of the book, but I can't deal to bring myself to put myself through that writing again, so no more Tehera Mafi for me. Then question 6, we can stay here for the moment because that is the book that was the biggest surprise. I have 2 for this one, and one is The Embroidered Book by Kate Hartfield. This is a historical fantasy set in 1768 that follows 2 queens. It is both Charlotte and Marie Antoinette. They are sisters, they are Austrian sisters. Charlotte was originally supposed to be married off to France, and Marie Antoinette had no plans. She was the younger sister, but some of their older siblings died, as happened in this time, and so then instead Charlotte was sent off to Naples, and Marie was sent off. Why am I saying that with a French accent? She was Austrian. That wasn't even her name, but she was sent off to France. This also then utilises a really interesting and unique magic system where you have to sacrifice objects and memories and feelings that are important to you for the magic to then work, and it has to be strong enough for the magic to work. So like you could sacrifice your love for your dog and you would no longer really care about the dog, but the magic that you wanted would work. Fascinating magical device, incredibly well done historical research. Like, I was really interested in the 2 after that. I know a little bit about Marie Antoinette, but not a lot about Charlotte, so I went and researched them. Everything was in here that I found. So I think just very in-depth research was done. I adore how everything linked in. It was just fantastic. And then the other book that I want is up there. The second book that was the biggest surprise for me was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline. So this is written by an indigenous Ojibwe author. I'd assumed from the cover and from the fact that I kept seeing it on my pages with who I follow that this was fantasy. It is not. It is technically historical fiction, but that makes my teeth hurt because it was set in the 90s. So contemporary, about living on the res and the influence of the FBI, of drugs, of living in this culture, having interactions with the colonizer community, everything like that. This was fantastic. This is another book that made me cry. I read it not that long after The House in the Cerulean Sea. My partner was concerned. This was just an amazing book. Amazing. If you don't read anything other than fantasy and you're wondering like, oh, it sounds interesting, but should I? Yes. Yes. Like, this book is amazing. Very hard-hitting. Please look at the trigger warnings for this one, but it's amazing. Then question 7 is my favourite new author. I have 2 small self-published, indie-published authors that I love, and 1 bigger author. The small one, Hannah from Letter M, Hannah O'Donnell. I was reading these because she's my friend. Of course I'm gonna like support her writing. I want to see how they are. I don't tend to read contemporary, but you know, we'll see. Fat Lip, great book. The Bridesmaid survival guide, I couldn't stop laughing. Like, I loved it. It's contemporary, about romance. Who am I? But this was so good. Then also Pablo Suarez. our very own, released the Broken Codex. So good. So good. And then, all the way up here, and I mean all the way up, we have Blackwater Sister by Zensho. This I was supposed to be buddy reading with Hannah from Letter M, the aforementioned. We didn't because her life got busy and I couldn't put the book down. I'm a good friend. Yeah, that's how good this was. I adored it. It was not what I expected at all. This is about an American Malaysian who is moving back to Malaysia, and her grandmother inhabits... I don't know, the ghost controls her, I can't remember what it is. But anyway, her grand controls her. I did not expect it to be as sassy, as violent, as topical, as beautifully written, as funny as it was. This is what I mean when I say that I need to listen to Olivia Savannah's recommendations for me. Because Olivia, girl, you know everything that I will love. This is amazing, this is fantastic, this is brilliant, this is so good. So good. Question 8 is the newest fictional crush that you have. I don't have one. Genuinely, I looked through all the books, I was trying to come up with one, to invent one, could not. So then the next question is your newest favourite fictional character, and sticking around here somewhere, here we are, we have Katza from Graceling by Christine Kershaw. She is a girl who was born with 2 eyes, each of different colour. She's got heterochromia, and that indicates that she has a power. She is told that this power is to kill people after she accidentally murders one of her uncles who was being a bit touchy-feely when she was a child. She then ends up going on this big journey to try and save the kingdom, essentially, with a bloke from one of the other kingdoms in this world. The only bad thing about this world is the naming, which is questionable. Everything else, brilliant, beautiful, fantastic, I adore it. This is like my vibes, my happy place sort of thing. So yeah, Katza, I love her. Now question 10 is about books that made me cry. I've already mentioned them both, that is Firekeeper's Daughter and The House in the Cerulean Sea. So I'm going to move straight on into question 11, which is books that made me happy. And there are 2. One I already mentioned, and that is The Bridesmaid Survival Guide. So to go in a little bit more depth about this one, this is essentially like a rom-com. It's about a girl who is going to be the bridesmaid for her aunt, who is a decent bit younger than her mum, and she is the only fat girl who's going to be the bridesmaid. She also gets broken up with by her partner, like right at the start, so she's like, great, like I don't even have someone to bring with as my other half, like what am I going to do? And it is all about the hijinks of her learning to be a bridesmaid and like all the things that come with that, along with these group of adults who are also her aunt's bridesmaids and groomsmen for the groom, as well as then interacting with people her own age, so her friends, some love interests, having a good old ridiculous time. I am not great with cringe. This does have some cringe, but it's manageable, and I usually don't care about romance. But I loved this so much. I spent most of the time like giggling. My other half can tell you I really enjoyed this book. And then the other one's in this corner, and I didn't think you'd want me to take you down there, and that is Vinti, or the entire Vinti collection by Inedia Corofo. This is a Afrofuturistic sci-fi where we follow the main character Binti as she leaves her home community and goes to a university off-planet, and things go wrong. Drastically wrong. Everyone is murdered on the ship that is heading towards her university because of a rivalry between another race that lives on her planet and this race that has boarded the ship and murdered them all. I don't even know how to explain how it goes from there, but it goes all on about the culture of Binti's people. She is a more reclusive tribe that tends to keep within themselves in what I believe is Africa, Afrofuturism, as well as other people kind of around the world on this planet and off-planet. It's done so beautifully, and at the end I found myself so sad that I didn't have any more stories to read. And if that isn't a mark of a good book, I don't know what is. Another one I mentioned already, but question 12 is the most beautiful book I bought or received. The Embroidered Book by Kate Hartfield. It's just, so, you know, it's a nice just jacket, well designed. Plain here, but sprayed, and then gorgeous stenciling here, and then on top of that, look at the naked dust jacket. It's beautiful, it's stunning, it's gorgeous, and I would die for it. And then the last question's about my TBR, so let's go back to the desk. So then, last but not least, question 13. Books that you need to read by the end of the year. So I've already mentioned for question 3 new releases that I want to read. So for this one, I've went with a challenge that I ended up setting myself at the beginning of the year. Lots of people did this on Bookstagram. There was a story going around where you asked people to recommend you books that you needed to read, and I took the ones that were closest to my TBR or that I wanted to read, with a few outliers. And I've gone through some, but I need to get through a fair few more. First up we have Dune by Frank Herbert. This one is from my partner. He's the one who recommended this one, so I need to pick that up. Then we have Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. The Cat Who Saved Books by Susuke Natsukawa. I can't read this until I've read, where have I put it? The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arakawa. So that is why this is taking so long to get to, because I had to read 3 other cat books beforehand. I have 1 left. The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. And then the last 2 I don't physically own yet, and that is Raybearer and The Air Awakens. I do not remember their authors off the top of my head, but they are on the screen right now. One was recommended by Princess from Castle Library, and that was The Air Awakens, and Raybearer was recommended by Becca from the Comic Book Fountain. So those are both on the TBR, because they're supposed to be good. I wouldn't have picked them up, usually, but I want to read them. So yeah, that is just a casual 7. Casual 7 books that I need to read before the end of the year. None of which are on my July TBR, because why would they be? But it's a good mix, you know, you've got some sci-fi, some fantasy, some random cats. It's a good mix. So that is the end of my 2022 mid-year book freakout tag. I'm going to tag everyone. Everyone does this anyway, so just do it. It's fun. It's a lot of fun to be able to come back to at the end of the year and to see kind of where you were midway through the year, the books that you've forgotten about, the books that, oh shit, I've not read that yet. Me, hello. So yeah, I highly recommend doing this. It's a lot of fun, and I would like to see down in the comments below if you know what is your favourite book of the year so far. If you don't, what is your least favourite? And if you don't even know that, tell me a book that you want to read at some point in the next 6 months. You should be able to manage one of those 3 questions. And if you manage to reach all the way to the end, please put the sunshine emoji for the sun that has been going in and out of the clouds the entire time I've been filming. You want attention, you get attention. If you'd like to see some more from me folks, then please do hit the subscribe button down below and you can see what books I managed to read in the next 6 months of the year. And for now, that's all. See you next time. Bye!